Going. All right, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. I'm on the internet, which is where I live now, which is where everyone lives now because of the pandemic. And I have a first-time guest on the show, which is interesting because I've been doing this for almost 8 years now, or more than 8 years. And I feel like I've seen your name so many times, and you've been playing shows and winning awards and appearing at all these events. And it's just, I've never had you on the show before, but I'm glad to actually have a chance to talk to you because I think you have an interesting story and you've been doing some good music in Winnipeg for a long time. So maybe the best way to start it off is if you want to just introduce yourself and maybe just give a bit of background about what you do musically.
Yeah, well, just so you know, I lay low in the shadows because of my three children keep me home and locked up for the most part.
I've got two, I get it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, born and raised right here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And these days, more affectionately known as Winterpeg, man, it's cold out.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I've been doing music full time for almost 14 years now.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of started off in the kind of the folk and roots community and kind of grew from there. And my music's always sort of been a blend of folk, roots, soul, country, pop. It all bleeds into what I do.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I've sort of more recently kind of nudged more into the country community, and my music's sort of always kind of organically gone that way anyways. And so signed a record deal 2 years ago with MDM Recordings here in Canada, and it's been going really well. Even in the midst of the craziness of the world right now and a pandemic and all that stuff, my head's above the water, and that feels real good to say. So
yeah, that's a good place to be because I've been doing over the past 6 months, 2 of these a week, or however many months the pandemic's been on for, and people are at different stages. Like some people have been able to kind of push through it and they're being creative and finding outlets, and other people have been stalled. Like it's a weird, such a strange situation for the world to be in right now, especially for creative people.
yeah, well, like if you're used to doing things a certain way, and if that's how you operate, the world has definitely, given us a curveball that doesn't allow us to do things that certain way anymore.
Yeah.
And I feel like these kinds of moments are opportunities to try new things and do something different. And and I in some ways I embrace that, as much as I damn well wish it wasn't happening.
Of course.
But I also feel like I can either, crawl under a rug and just want to hide, or I can sort of figure out, okay, this is the reality we live in, and find a way to move forward. And that's kind of always been my way, so that's what I've been doing.
Cool. And maybe that's a good segue into the show that you're doing on Valentine's Day, because that is, you're finding a way to perform during a time when you can't really perform anywhere, right? So
yeah.
I know you have a history of doing Christmas shows, but what is the story behind this Valentine's Day gig you're doing?
Well, this is funny. So because Christmas was not that long ago, it feels very, very recent.
It does, yeah.
And I didn't actually have a Valentine's show on my radar. And then a friend of mine who is a great support in a lot of different fronts with music, he loves music and supports a lot of music, and actually offers some financial support. And he said, "Look, if we pay you, why don't you put on a Valentine's Day show?" Well, he said, we'll cover the costs. And I was like, I'd be stupid not to do that.
Yeah.
So I said, let me think about it. Yeah, sounds good. And so it sort of enacted about 3 weeks ago. It sort of enacted us to kind of like put the ball in motion to kind of put the show together. And I kind of made the joke recently that like people were like, "Don, you've already got Christmas. What do you want, Valentine's Day too?" And so yeah, I just felt like it is an opportunity in terms of people are going to be home anyways for the most part, and we are loosening restrictions here where people can go to restaurants, but I think that even that's limited and even a little bit questionable right now still to whether it's the right move or not. So I figured people are going to be home. They're going to be looking for something to do. It's date night. Maybe we can we can be the soundtrack to their date night.
Right.
So
right.
that was the idea.
Do you have a whole set of Valentine's themed or love themed songs to play on that show?
Yeah. I think I've kind of, my whole career has been sort of contingent on good love songs, and I mean, with some good social movement and some more intense songs. But I think a lot of songs in my career have been sort of born out of a good loving relationship, and I always sort of have the opportunity to share those. And so yeah, I think there'll be no shortage of good love music. And I actually have some guests with me. So I have Noah Dirksen from Winnipeg here, who's a fantastic singer-songwriter, and Rihanna Ray Sage will be on the bill as well. So it's going to be the first half is me solo, and then the second half is kind of a three singer-songwriters on stage. So it'll be
very cool.
Interesting. Yeah.
how can people get involved in? How do people tune in? How does someone watch the
Yeah,
show?
so the best way to do that is go to donamero.ca, go to the tour link, and then hit the link in there, and it'll take you to the side door page where you can buy a ticket. It's $20.
Cool.
It does feel weird. That's the other part of this whole world that we live in now. It feels weird to charge people to stay home.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah. I know what
something
you mean. Yeah, yeah.
it's an odd thing for me. I even call it out. I say, look, I know it's weird for me to ask you for $20 to stay home, but we bring a really grade A quality show. We've got three really high definition cameras. We've got
Nice.
a really great sound tech in the room, kind of helping us make sure we deliver the best audio visual we can for people at home. And it's a really, and it's not spectacular with lots of lights and flash, but spectacular in terms of like a really good, clean, crisp, beautiful sounding show. I think that we're going to be able to provide. And for the couple times we've done this already, we're always really impressed with what we're able to pull off
Yeah.
remotely like this. So.
Well, the one thing I like, I mean, it is weird to watch a show from home for sure, no matter who's playing. But the one thing I do like about those kind of shows is that they seem very intimate. Even if you're on a big stage, because you're going directly to everyone's home computer or TV or however they're watching their phone, it's very much like you're speaking, to each individual audience member as opposed to this kind of mass of people that maybe you can't focus on as immediately, if that makes sense.
It's so true. And I mean, the energy shift is different, but I also feel like if you just embrace the moment that this is and kind of get out of your head of like needing that full crowd. Again, we miss it, we want it,
Of
but
course.
if I can get out of my head of like, oh, there's no applause at the end of this song. Like, what am I supposed to do? There's that awkward. But I just kind of like I understand that there are people out there watching, there are people enjoying what we're doing. And if I enjoy it, they're going to enjoy it all the more. And sometimes I call it out, like I call the spade a spade, and I think just say, I miss hearing your claps, and
Yeah,
just say what it is, and people and they'll say, I miss being there with you. And so it is a reciprocated feeling, that's for sure. So I do my best to embrace it.
cool. Well, it's a cool idea, especially to theme it around the holiday too. It's a nice reason for people to tune into a live stream because they're happening all the time because
Yeah.
musicians are trying to find a way to get out there, right? But this is it's tied to something that everyone's going to be thinking about in some way or another.
Trying to capitalize on warming the cockles of their heart is what I'm trying
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
to.
So just to go back a bit to the type of stuff you play, what is the appeal of country music to you? And I say that knowing that country is such an umbrella genre, and there's so many, what one person thinks when they hear the word country is very different from what another person thinks, and there's so much like diversity and richness in that genre as a whole. But what
Yeah.
first drew you to that? Like why country music?
Well, I grew up on it for sure. My folks were country bluegrass singer-songwriters
Oh,
themselves. I mean,
cool, cool.
although weekend warriors, they weren't out there sort of partying, and they were partying, but at home, my folks would have friends come over and they pull out guitars, and it was really like sort of my first introduction to live music was watching my folks play and their friends hanging out. It was kind of like the beers would be out and the
Yep.
cheers and and things around 2, 3 in the morning would get kind of ruckus. But that was my first introduction to live music, and it was a lot of country.
Okay.
So I come by it quite honestly from there. But I also grew up on like Elton John, Lionel Richie, Alabama, Garth Brooks.
Hmm.
My first love was like Boys to Men and
Okay.
like In Sync and like soul bluesy. Not that those are soul and bluesy, but like boy band type stuff. And I
Yeah.
actually started one when I was 16 with
Okay.
some guys. You wouldn't have heard of us. We did nothing. Uh,
Do any
but
recordings exist of that?
Oh, I wish I would love to see that right now,
Yeah.
but no, we weren't even that good to have anything recorded. So,
Right. Right.
but yeah, for me, I think it's the there's something in the country community that like a good country song is a full story. There's no
Mhm.
guessing to have to like figure out what the story was about. It's kind of like it's very, I don't want to say plain because that's like an insult too, but it's very much like you can follow the trajectory. Sometimes you can almost always assume where it's going. Uh, but for me, I feel like it was again an organic thing for me to kind of jump into the country community because again, I had my toes in the water for
Yeah.
so long. But yeah, I feel like I love it because it's as big of a genre as it is. I feel like it's very small in terms of the community itself. Like I've been privileged and lucky enough to kind of get to know almost, I shouldn't say everybody, but quite a few people in the Canadian country music scene. and now kind of starting to make my way across down in the US and kind of
Yeah,
meeting people down there. And it's not massive, it's not out of the realm of sort of, getting to know people a little more intimately in that community. And so I think that's part of it too, is that it does feel a little bit more homey,
sure.
than other things that I've done. I guess that the folk and roots community would be that too, but
Well, they're all kind of interlinked, right? Especially here in Winnipeg, there's such a strong. People love that stuff. They love country. They love
yeah,
bluegrass. They love folk, blues, roots music. If you want to use that as an
yeah.
overall category, all that stuff is so huge here, and there's such a tight knit kind of community for it, for sure.
It's such my only concern, I guess, is when you get kind of put in this box of like, this is what you are.
Hmm.
As I'm a lot of things. Like like I said, I've rock, soul, pop, country, blue. It's all in there. It's all in the influences of what I do. And so like I still feel like that guy who kind of fits the roots mold. I still feel like the guy that can kind of do a pop song. I feel like the
Yeah,
guy that can do a good country song, can pull off the soul thing. Like I don't even want to say pull off because that's not like I'm trying to like I got a trick up my sleeve, but it's like
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
just really part of who I am. And so I mark my words, I will release a soul record one day.
Cool.
It's gonna happen. And I just don't feel like I want to sort of like commit to genre. I want to commit to making great music, and
Yeah.
and the chapter that I'm in right now is where I belong, and I believe that.
Well, one of the things that's come up on this podcast a lot when it's talking to country artists, folk singers, even hip hop and punk rock bands and stuff is that there's this feeling that I have anyway that Manitoba people really like authenticity here. Whatever kind of music you're playing, they like to hear something genuine, and there's like a really strong bullshit detector in this city and province for music. Like people, if someone's putting on an act and they're
Yeah.
trying to be something they're not, I think people see through it really quickly. And it might be in part because everyone is so tight knit, and everyone does, someone who knows someone who knows someone, and they know you're not actually that guy, right? Or whatever. But do you think that kind of like, do you see that here that people want a genuine, whether it's storytelling or whether it's just a presentation of something creative?
Yeah, it's funny because it's an interesting line because there is that like the people that you see. I'm gonna bring her up because I think she's fantastic. But Alexa Dirks,
Okay. Yep.
Begonia,
Yep. Yep.
you know, I don't know if what she wears and how she gets on stage and the character that she brings is who she'd be in the supermarket. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
But I don't think that that's not truly her. I think what she is she's really fully becoming that entertainer as well, And I think that there is something different between being a musician and then being an entertainer. There's a
Sure.
lot of great
Sure.
musicians that are not great entertainers.
Yeah. That's
And
true.
I
That's
and
true.
and I think that what happens is that you are one thing I'm working hard at is being a great entertainer. And like the however, I also feel like the guy that I am right now is the guy you're going to meet everywhere. So I really kind of keep that in check for myself. But um yeah, I guess to answer your question, I feel like we are all sort of like in some ways having to sort of suss out or like is what this person giving to me the real thing or are they just trying
Right.
to put something on? And sometimes it's very, very transparent that somebody's really trying to be something they're not. But I don't know. I feel like I'm also the kind of guy that is like always give people the benefit of a doubt, and kind of go, let's just hear them where they're at. And but I know what I like and what I don't like, and so I think
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's a hard thing to totally always figure out, I guess.
I don't know if there is an actual answer to it either. I just think it's an interesting thing to think about too, because I think that most people are trying to be genuine, whether they're trying to be a musician or an entertainer, however they describe themselves. I
Right.
think that they're even if they play a character, they're trying to authentically represent what that character is. And yeah, like you said, you can when someone's forcing it, you can kind of
Right.
tell.
Well, and
And
the truth of it is they could genuinely be lost, right? Trying to
right,
like grasping at like I hope this works without really sort of like just embody who you are. And that's I'm 40 this year, so I
yeah,
just turned 40 in September, and I feel like now more than ever I've really embraced all the parts of who I am. And but that took me 15 years,
sure,
like I'm
sure.
not the same guy I was 15 years ago. I'm the evolution of that guy. And I think that to get to this place, it took a lot of mistakes, and
Yeah, yeah.
luckily people haven't, canceled me.
No, I hear you. I'm a year younger than you, so same kind of deal for sure.
Right.
I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So with your I mean, obviously the pandemic's happening, and people's opportunities to play music live, except for things like the live stream that you're doing, are pretty much done. But have you been able to use this opportunity to create? Like, have you been writing? Have you been coming up with new material during this sort of weird lockdown time?
Yeah, well, like so I've got three little ones. So mine are 9, 5, and 2,
Okay.
and they can very easily take up a year of your life.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
And so, how old are yours?
11 and 7.
11 and 7. So I mean,
Yeah.
like, so there, to be honest, there hasn't been a lot of idle time.
Sure.
I mean, there's been a lot of like play with Legos and build
Yeah,
snow forts,
yeah,
and it's been a lot of play. But I kind of see that as like really cherishing this season that I'm in. So I haven't created a lot actually, to be honest. And I'm actually just starting to now
okay.
get back into more setting up rights and doing a lot more co-writing and stuff, and just taking a little more time to be creative. And yeah, the way that that's worked for me, and maybe the way that I've stayed so busy, as I've always got irons in the fire, and I'm co-hosting a podcast. I'm
Nice.
starting my own mini series podcast type thing that's hopefully going to be starting later this year.
Awesome.
I wrote a children's book. I've got a bunch of, with the label, a bunch of plans kind of we're working on with them. Social media is not slowing down. There's enough to keep me busy there.
Yeah.
Just kind of planning and figuring out, try to play the game. And so there's never a dull day. So but I do have to actually like carve out time to be creative, which kind of sucks because I remember back in the day when I could just be like, I'm just gonna pick up my guitar and play for hours. Well, now it's like I get half an hour and that's a good time.
Yeah.
That's.
No. Yeah.
But I wish I could go back to my younger self and say, just cherish the fact that you got to sit and play your guitar for 3 hours, because that's not happening anymore.
Yeah. Does your songwriting process change now that you do only have, say, that half an hour versus the 3 hours, or do you still kind of generate material the same way in your
I
thought process?
I honestly feel like so I wrote songs for the first 5 albums that I put together, and they were good. I feel like a good songwriter.
Hmm.
I'm not a great songwriter, and I think my strength is working with other great songwriters, and I know I've got something to say, and I know I can turn a phrase and all those things. So I really shine with other writers, I think. Um, that being said, I think I've kind of entered a season in the last couple years anyways where I haven't had a lot of new writes sort of in my own personal life. Like I had a
Hmm.
co-write today with my buddy Quentin Blair. Do you know
Oh,
Quentin?
yeah, he's been on my show like 4 or 5 times. Yeah, great guy. One of the
So
one of the best, one of my favorite local artists for sure. Like in
he's
any genre, he's great. Yeah, yeah,
such a good dude.
yeah.
And so we got together today and worked on a song, and I love doing that. And it wasn't necessarily for me. It was sort of like
Mhm.
maybe for him, maybe for somebody else. We don't know. But I feel like I need to make more time for that because I think. And so anyways, I've got some plans in the next little while for like a once a week write session with
Oh,
somebody
cool.
else, and so that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
That's cool. Yeah, yeah. I guess that's a different way of like using a different part of your brain, probably, right? Than if you're sitting there writing by yourself, because you have to take the other person's strengths and weaknesses into account and share the writing process.
Yeah, like you kind of have to all get on the same train, and kind of go in the same direction, and that's the hard part sometimes is that you're all on different trains or different vehicles altogether, and you
Yeah.
walk out of there going, "Oh, that was a really tough write," and more often than not, I've left rooms, and maybe this says something about me and not the others, but whenever I'm involved, we don't finish a song. So it's it does take some work, and sometimes it's get things started and it gets wrapped up later on. And so
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard to know exactly. Sometimes it's lightning in a bottle, man, and you I think my goal is to personally, for me, write one great song a year. I'd love to write 50 songs a year and have one of them be fantastic. So
Right.
I'd love them all to be fantastic, but I'm trying to also understand that not every song has to be like a radio success either. It could be a great song, could be the last great song I think I wrote is my recent one called "I Hate That Song."
Okay.
I wrote that on my own a couple years ago with and Rihanna Ray Sage is actually guesting on it. She did
Cool.
some vocals on it, but it's one of my all-time favorites in the last couple of years, and so um, I could love to write more songs like that.
Well, I think sometimes just as a listener too, like songs that aren't singles are often better than the singles on anyone's album. Like there's some album tracks by a ton of artists that are just like, this is the, I get why it wasn't the single, but to me it's the
Right.
single, right? Because it's like this is the song that you connect with the most, and as a listener, and you kind of keep putting back on over and over again instead of the radio hit.
It is the one thing that I do that does bother me about the machine of the industry
Yeah,
is that there are the powers that be that get to call the shots, and you know, my role is to hopefully always bring great material to the table, whether it's going to be single or not. I'm less concerned about that,
yeah,
but I do know that if a song breaks, a lot more people get fed. So so a lot of us want a song to do really well on radio and break through and that kind of thing, because then everybody kind of wins, right?
yeah.
So so I always try to be a good team player in that respect.
Well, it's an interesting. I think a lot of people maybe don't think about that too, right? About what happens after the song hits big, because yeah, people are getting paid. People are getting shows from it. They're getting jobs from it and stuff. And I mean,
Yeah.
I talk to a lot of punk bands and metal bands and stuff on here, and they have a very different attitude in the sense that it's just super DIY, and the idea of getting a hit or a radio single is just not even it's not even on the table. So their approach
Mm.
to recording and to releasing music is just completely different. And so the idea of being on the radio, which just a band playing extreme music would be considered selling out, is to people playing more mainstream palatable music is no, this is the way to succeed, right? So it's interesting,
Yeah.
the difference.
Yeah, and for me, like, I think about it as like, I recently thought of this analogy of like, you think of the star player on a team,
Hmm.
it really is about the team. It's not about that star. Like, that star player might be the face of whatever, of the franchise or something, and but that person wouldn't be the star that they are without all the other pieces. And so, but if that person and that team does well, then everybody does well. And so
Yeah,
I'm trying to think oftentimes of like, yes, there are times when I get to call the shots, but I also have to defer to the coach, or defer to the assistant manager or whatever. Like,
yeah,
people,
yeah,
there's
yeah,
all these people involved that, like, I don't have all the answers, and so I respect that I might be the star of this team,
yeah,
but respecting that if this thing does really well, everybody does well,
yeah.
So I'm trying to keep that in perspective too.
Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it, I think. So
Yeah.
you have a pretty big catalog at this point already.
Mhm.
If someone is new to your music, do you have a recommendation for what they should be listening to? Is it just the most
Hmm.
recent thing you want them to hear your most recent work, or is there kind of a definitive Don Amero record that you would point people towards?
Well, I mean, if I'm being honest, my favorite album that I've ever done, I did with our buddy Murray Pulver. Do you know Murray?
I know he is. I don't know him personally, but yeah, I know he is. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
Murray's an incredible guitar player, producer, just person, human being in general. He helped me with my album Refined back in 2015. Um, that one is, for some reason, it feels like it's a stamp, and here's what it is. That was my fifth album, I think, fifth.
Okay.
I spent the previous four albums to try to make that album. So
Okay.
that
Cool.
was
Yeah.
like the album I was trying to make for so long, and I finally did after about 10 years of doing music full time, and Murray helped me make it. So I feel like that one says a lot.
Okay.
Um, Kind of more recently, there's one song I think is sort of like the Don Amero song. I didn't write it, but it really has become my own. It's a song called Church.
Okay.
I think that's a big track for me. It resonates with a lot of folks. And Yeah, I mean, if people wanted to do the deep dive and see where I started, Change Your Life is hilarious. It's kind of it was back in 2006 when I recorded that, and I recorded it on my own in a little studio I made out of cardboard and blankets,
Nice.
and it's real rough. It's not polished by any stretch, but it's where I began. So it's funny to go back there and listen where it started, and then listen to the most recent stuff and go,
Yeah.
holy smokes, it's night and day in terms of production and what you can do when you get the right people at the helm. So,
Do
yeah.
you still play any of those songs from back then? Do they ever
Not
show
really.
up in sets?
Like
No.
one or two maybe. I mean, I look back and I just think I was such a baby then, in terms of my writing. I was singing words because because I was a good singer,
Yeah.
but I was not a good lyricist at that time. Not to say that there wasn't some, like, a few small diamonds in a lot of rough. But I feel like that was, I think other people might go back and delete that stuff and go, I don't want anybody to see that. But it's like, no, I want the next somebody coming up to, if they're like, I love Don Amaro, I'm inspired by him. I want them to be able to go back and go, oh, he also used to do garbage. So I don't think it's garbage.
Yeah.
It's just where I started, and I just feel, here's the thing, I do want to at the 20-year anniversary of that album or something, I would like to re-release it, rewrite some of them,
Oh, cool.
and have them fully produced and fully realized, so that I can kind of share with the world kind of where it began, but kind of if I had all the pieces that I have now.
Yeah. Well, it's nice that you keep it up there because you're right. A lot of people do get rid of all that stuff because they're embarrassed or they feel it doesn't reflect how they sound now. But
Oh,
I
I'm
think there's definitely
embarrassed.
yeah.
I'm embarrassed.
I think there's definitely value though, right? To keeping like all of the stages. Like you said, someone could come along and maybe they're just learning how to play guitar, learning how to sing, learning how to write a song, and they love your stuff, 5 years from now, and they can wait,
Right.
go back. Here's where you started. Here's your rougher versions of what eventually turned into your music now, right? So
Yeah. Well, and I think that just like people in the business might say that's a terrible move to keep all your stuff up there that you're like embarrassed by, but I just the organic Don Amero says somebody out there is listening and looking, and if they only hear all the super polished, super expensively produced stuff,
yeah,
then they're not going to hear the real, and they're going to go, wait a second, that's how it starts. I'll never get there. But if they can go back to Don Amero at the beginning and go, oh, that's where it starts. Okay, I can do this. And
yeah.
I want people to believe in themselves. That's my whole thing is like, how can I serve people with what I do? And I think that's part of it is leaving that out there for people to kind of understand that this has been a process, a 15-year process almost.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that. As someone who hoards local music and I have all kinds of weird demos and demo tapes and weird live recordings and stuff from all these bands from the past 25 years or so, I appreciate that because I think that we're in an era now where you can just make everything available and you can keep it and you can put it online and people can find it if they want to. And I
Yeah.
think there's a lot, 25 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, even people weren't doing that because they didn't have in their palm of their hand the ability to record and film video. And there's so many great bands that maybe never got recorded. Maybe your boy band would have been great, but it never got recorded. And so now if you're doing that at that age, you would have had the whole thing documented, and you could have
Yeah.
potentially. I mean, it could have been bad for you. I don't know, depending how bad the sound was, but like you'd have it, right? So if you ever wanted to look back or re-release it or say, hey, everyone, this is how I started, it would be available. But and so now everyone can do that. So I hope people do what you're doing and just keep it all out there because someone's going to find value in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope so. That's my hope for sure.
What's the best way to find out information about your releases and when you're playing shows, once shows come back? Where would you send people? The website?
Yeah. Donamero.ca is kind of where we try to keep things up to date. I would say my Instagram handle is kind of the most frequently used on our part.
Okay.
We share a lot of stuff there, what's going on. Um, but I would love for people to go to donamero.ca and sign up for the newsletter.
Yeah.
Between you and me, and anybody else who's listening,
Yeah.
I really want to get off social media. Actually, I think I'll always use it, or our team will use it to like
Yeah.
update people and stuff going on because it's the social network, right? But I don't like the fact that like Instagram, Facebook, they have these algorithms in place that basically say, oh, you've got information to share, you fit this algorithm, we're going to make sure these thousands of people hear it. Oh, you're sharing a show, it doesn't fit our algorithm, only 50 people are going to get
Mm-hmm.
this message. I would
Unless you pay
rate
for it, right? Unless you pay for the ad, and then yeah.
yeah, but so for me, I feel like with my own newsletter, at least I know that we've hit send. It goes to their inbox. If they don't want to listen to it or read it, that's fine.
Yeah.
But at least we've gotten the opportunity to get their attention. And I don't like that like if Instagram, Facebook shut down tomorrow, not that they probably would, but if they did, all that is gone. So I
Sure. Yeah.
really think having my own personal email list of folks that are supporting me and love what I do, that's what we're trying to do and I actually kind of would like to kind of have that be sort of where I share a lot more information, and I use it as a place where I give a lot more treats and
Cool.
advance listens to songs and gifts and things like that. I use that for that because I feel like those people are the real solid Don Amero fans. So that's what I would encourage folks to do is go to there, sign up for the newsletter. But yeah, follow me on all the other spaces too. But donamero.ca is the
Cool.
place to meet me.
And before I let you go, what are the details of the Valentine's Day show again?
Yeah, so Sunday, February 14th, it's going to be at 7 o'clock Central Time. Tickets are $20. Go to donamero.ca to find your ticket there. And it's going to be a great night of stories and songs, probably a few cheap laughs, and we'll have a good time.
Awesome.